Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're completely reframing how we look at human capital. So often, human resource strategy gets brushed off as this, soft skill, something that's just about office culture or making sure everyone is happy. But actually, it is a hard, quantitative driver of enterprise efficiency, cost structure, and outright profitability. If you really want to understand the bottom line, you've got to understand the people generating it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the productivity profit link, then look at strategic hiring and training, explore the power of self-management, navigate the risks and realities of teams, and finally wrap things up with performance and managerial duty. Starting right off with Section 1, the productivity profit link. Now, you might be wondering, how do we fundamentally lower costs and boost returns? When we look at corporate strategy, it's super tempting to just point to financial engineering, debt restructuring, or maybe these massive market shifts. But honestly, the real sustainable answer, it lies right there in the daily output of your workforce. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Think about manufacturing employees. When they're highly productive, they literally lower the cost of goods sold as a percentage of overall revenue. Or take your sales force, crank up their productivity, and you're getting way more income without having to bump up your expense level at all. And in R&D, productive employees are boosting the percentage of revenues that come from brand new products, giving you a much higher return on your R&D investments. So in short, productive employees lower the cost of generating revenue, they increase the return on sales, and by extension, they absolutely supercharge the company's return on invested capital. So the ultimate challenge for any HR function is figuring out how to actually increase that productivity. And our source material points us to a really clear blueprint. It's built on 4 strategic choices, or pillars: strategic hiring, employee training, self-managing teams, and pay for performance. Let's move to Section 2, strategic hiring and training. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that getting the right people in the door isn't just about one thing. It requires a dual match. First, you have the internal culture match. You want people with a positive attitude, who work well in teams, right? Because those people naturally work harder and interact better with customers, which drives customer loyalty. But that's only half the puzzle. You also need a strategic objective match. Your hiring strategy has to completely align with the company's external goals. Basically, the people you hire must have attributes that strategically line up with what the business is actually trying to pull off in the marketplace. And once they're in the door, training is absolutely crucial. Employees are a major input into your production process. By training them, you're upgrading their skill levels. Highly skilled folks perform tasks faster, they're way more accurate, and they can easily pick up the complex methods used in modern production. It brings the company massive efficiency gains, really just through natural learning and experimentation. Moving on to Section 3, the power of self-management. This third pillar involves a fascinating structural shift. We're seeing a rapid move away from traditional top-down hierarchies towards something way more dynamic. A typical self-managing team is usually 5 to 15 employees, and instead of just doing one repetitive microtask, they produce an entire product or take on a complete task from start to finish. Since they learn all the tasks and rotate jobs, you end up with an incredibly flexible workforce that can seamlessly fill in for absent coworkers. But here's the real game changer. They actually take over traditional managerial duties. They schedule their own work, order materials, manage vacations, and even hire new members themselves. This whole setup relies entirely on empowerment. Essentially, empowerment is just the process of giving lower-level employees actual decision-making power. And the reason this works so well is that thrusting this greater responsibility onto team members acts as a massive motivator. Human psychology consistently shows that people just naturally respond well when given greater autonomy over their daily work. So the crucial point is this figure right here, 30%. Think about that for a second. Introducing these self-managing teams reportedly bumps up productivity by 30% or more, all while seeing a substantial increase in product quality. Plus, because you're stripping away layers of middle management and creating a flatter hierarchy, the overall cost structure of the company drops significantly. Section 4, risks and realities of teams. Okay, but before we go dismantling every corporate hierarchy, we need to acknowledge that reorganizing a workforce this drastically requires some really careful execution. The sources are crystal clear here. Teams are no panacea. You can't just toss people into a group and magically expect a 30% productivity spike. To succeed, particularly in manufacturing, these teams have to be fully integrated with flexible manufacturing technology. Also, because you're placing heavy management responsibilities on regular team members, you absolutely have to provide them with substantial management training. It's wild, but many companies completely forget this in their rush to drive down costs.
Haste is your enemy here. If you rush the process just to eliminate supervisors without supporting your people, the teams simply won't work out as planned.
Section 5. Performance and managerial duty. Let's move to and see how this builds into our fourth pillar, which is compensation. When it comes to pay for performance, it's not quite as simple as just throwing bonuses at people. You have to define exactly what kind of job performance is being rewarded. Relying purely on individual incentives can actually undermine the very cooperation and teamwork you need to realize those productivity gains. Instead, the world's most efficient companies use team-based pay. By linking pay to group or team performance, you create an incredibly strong incentive for individuals to actually cooperate with each other and pursue team goals. It facilitates true teamwork. Which leads us to this powerful takeaway from the sources. People-related issues should be a central concern and responsibility of most managers in organizations and are not confined to a specialist HR function. The knowledge and experience of your people are literally the key factors influencing the success of any strategy. This means every single manager, no matter what department they're in, has to take ownership of the HR role. You just can't outsource team motivation and productivity to a specialist department down the hall.
Creating a climate where people strive to achieve success is a crucial role for any manager. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Take a look at your own organization, or even just your own team. What kind of climate are you creating for your own people to strive and achieve success? Are you empowering them? Are you aligning their goals? Because ultimately, the bottom line depends entirely on your answer.
We're going to be looking at your organization's business strategy in a completely new light. I want you to think of your business strategy like a high-performance vehicle. You've got this sleek design, a totally clear destination, and a really powerful vision behind the wheel. But what actually powers that vehicle? What literally makes it move forward? Well, it's the human resource structure. The HR structure is the engine of your business strategy. And if your engine isn't meticulously tuned to the specific type of race you're running, honestly, it doesn't matter how incredible the vehicle looks on paper, you're just not going to cross the finish line.
And that brings us to a really critical question, and I want you to genuinely think about this for a second. Is your HR actually hindering your strategy? There's this super common myth that strategy is just about financial metrics or market share or, writing brilliant product statements. But the truth we found in our source material is kind of mind-blowing. While formal HR systems and structures are definitely vital for supporting successful strategies, it's entirely possible that they might actively hinder your strategy if they aren't specifically tailored to the types of strategies you're actually pursuing.
So, to solve this pretty dangerous disconnect, we're going to use a clear 5-part framework today. First, we'll look at the strategy HR disconnect. Then, Pillar 1, people resource. Next, Pillar 2, people behavior. After that, Pillar 3, organizing people. And finally, aligning for the future.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, the strategy HR disconnect. We really need to establish why we have to view human resources differently in today's volatile business environment.
Simply put, strategy requires people to execute. Having a brilliant marketing or IT strategy means absolutely nothing if the people trying to implement it aren't supported by the right framework. Formal HR systems are important, sure, but they are absolutely not a one-size-fits-all solution. Think about it for a second. An HR system perfectly designed for a stable, low-cost manufacturing strategy will completely suffocate a fast-moving, highly innovative tech strategy. If the engine isn't tuned to your specific race, the whole vehicle just stalls out.
Moving on to Section 2, Pillar 1, people resource. This is where we get into the traditional, or what we call the hard issues of human resource management.
Now, the importance of the human resource absolutely cannot be undermined, but managing it, that is not like managing capital or technology. Traditional HR activities help build core competencies in a few key ways. You have audits to assess exactly what HR requirements you need, and goal setting for individuals and teams. Most organizations expect line managers to handle this with an essentially designed scheme, just to make sure those appraisals actually link back to the overarching strategy. We're also seeing a massive shift toward 360-degree appraisals, so gathering perspectives from peers, other departments, and even external stakeholders to assess an employee's true strategic impact. Plus, recruitment and retention are huge. Many public sector organizations, for example, have recently had to aggressively recruit people with specialized marketing and IT skills just to get closer to their customers. And with how fast things change nowadays, succession planning has had to shift. It's less about preparing one person for one specific job and more about ensuring you just have a sufficiently large pool of talented individuals ready to go.
But here's where we've got to be incredibly careful about alignment. A perfectly good HR practice can ruin a brand new strategy. For instance, if your strategy requires tight, cross-functional teamwork, but your reward system relies on highly geared individual incentives, kind of like what you traditionally find in a sales force, you will absolutely destroy that collaboration. Different strategies require wildly different resources. One strategy might require recruiting uniquely competent individuals, like, say, a top surgeon in a hospital, a criminal lawyer, or a leading academic. In stark contrast, another strategy might require strict redeployment and redundancy planning. The hard system has to perfectly match the goal.
We're also seeing a massive shift in how competencies are developed. A lot of training and development plans have actually reduced the use of formal, rigid programs in favor of more coaching and mentoring to support self-development. And why is that? Well, because an organization that builds a strong capability in mentoring creates this amazing environment that attracts creative people who genuinely like to be challenged. In turn, that creates a workforce that is way more capable than competitors of thinking out of the box and producing innovative ways to compete. This essentially transforms HR from a basic administrative task into a massive strategic weapon.
Let's slide into Section 3, Pillar 2, People Behavior. We're pivoting now from those administrative frameworks straight into culture and collective behavior.
People are not like other resources. It sounds so incredibly simple, doesn't it? But it carries profound weight. Yes, people influence strategy through their pure competence, but more importantly, they influence it through their collective behavior, that is, their culture. There is a really clear dividing line here. On one side, you have the hard HR issues we just talked about, the metrics, the audits, the pay scales. But on the flip side, we have the soft HR issues. This is your culture, your collective behavior, changing the organization's paradigms, and shaping the context of the workplace itself. The really complex reality highlighted in our sources is that so many problems in managing strategic change actually stem from a failure to understand, address, and change the culture. A failure to manage strategy is, more often than not, a failure to manage culture.
So how do managers actually handle this soft side? Well, they need to figure out how to change the entire organizational paradigm, which is especially critical when the business environment is changing rapidly. Leaders have to start viewing themselves as people-oriented shapers of context, not just as business analysts crunching numbers. They have to understand the deep relationship between daily behaviors and big strategic choices. Because if leaders don't prioritize these softer behavioral efforts, the hard tools like restructuring or rolling out a new IT system will just completely fail to deliver.
All right, Section 4, Pillar 3, Organizing People. Here we're looking at the very structure and processes of the HR function itself.
So how exactly should we organize people to be competitively superior? The sources outline 4 broad roles that the HR function can take on. First, a service provider, doing things like recruitment. Second, a regulator, setting the rules for pay and promotion. Third, an advisor on HR strategy to the line managers. And fourth, a change agent, actively moving the organization forward. Now, the real danger here is expecting one single HR professional to juggle all of these simultaneously. I mean, imagine trying to be the strict rule regulator while at the exact same time trying to act as the inspiring change agent. It's incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
And this brings us to what we could call the middle manager dilemma. See, there's been this massive push toward having line managers handle HR issues directly. On paper, this is great. It gives them true ownership of the business strategy. But here's the catch. We are expecting middle managers to suddenly transform into highly competent HR professionals, while simultaneously hammering them with short-term target pressures, downsizing, and delayering. They are, quite frankly, overwhelmed. Handled badly, expecting these busy middle managers to execute complex HR strategies is just a formula for absolute mediocrity. So I want you to reflect on this for a second. Think about your own organization's future strategies. Do your traditional structures still make sense, or is it time to ask a tough question? Should some of these HR issues, like specialized recruitment or training, actually stay in-house, or should they be bought from specialist external suppliers who can bring in wider industry best practices? It's a huge strategic choice.
And that takes us to our final section, aligning for the future. Let's bring all 3 of these pillars together so we can see how to actually execute this.
If we look at the balanced scorecard framework, it beautifully illustrates how everything connects. It's not just about the top box, the financials. Notice how the bottom piece, learning and growth, which is fundamentally about your employees' capabilities, skills, and motivation, feeds directly into improving internal business processes. Those improved processes are what create value for the customer, which finally drives that financial success at the top. It explicitly links your human engine at the very base directly to your ultimate vision and strategy in the center.
because the most crucial takeaway from all of this is that strategy is not just about making great statements, having a brilliant pricing strategy or a clever internet strategy or an aggressive marketing plan. Those are necessary, for sure, but they are absolutely not enough on their own to achieve a true competitive advantage. You need that human engine fully tuned and aligned to power those initiatives.
Which leaves us with one final, vital question to challenge you with today. Take a good, hard look at your own organization. Are your performance management processes, your culture, and your HR structures truly aligned with tomorrow's strategies? Or is your HR engine holding your vehicle back? It might just be time to look under the hood.
We hear a lot about strategy, technology, and capital being the big drivers of business success, right? But today, we're going to look at the actual bedrock of any successful enterprise, the people. It's a fascinating look at how human capital and organizational culture are what truly drive a business forward.
So, you got to ask yourself, what is an organization's absolute ultimate competitive advantage? You might immediately think, oh, it's got to be cutting-edge technology, or maybe vast financial resources, or some revolutionary new product. But let's be real about the modern business environment for a second. When all the competitors in your industry have access to the exact same things, when literally anyone can buy the same software or secure similar funding, what actually sets you apart?
Well, it comes down to organizing people. The crucial point here is that people, and exactly how effectively we organize them, are pretty much the only true, unique resources left to give a firm a real competitive edge. On the surface, it sounds simple, right? But with an ever-changing environment and all these complexities bubbling up from both inside and outside the company, organizing people has to be addressed super carefully. To be competitively superior, evaluating your people's productivity and their contribution just has to become a top priority.
Okay, so here is our roadmap for today. We're going to map out this paradigm shift by looking at the human advantage, the incredible power of culture, the actual reality of behavioral change, the 4 vital roles of HR, and finally, manager and team dynamics.
Starting us off with Part 1, the human competitive advantage.
Let's see how this goes from a broad idea to practical execution. Think about the stark contrast between tangible resources and human resources. Tangible resources, any startup or massive firm can just buy those. They're easily acquired by competitors, so they're no longer a guaranteed moat. But human resources are entirely unique to your specific organization. Your people, their motivation, their specific knowledge, and the unique organizational processes you use to recruit and train them, you can't just buy that off a shelf. That is your human competitive advantage right there.
And to actually be competitively superior, we have to look at how we organize people across 3 broad areas. It's not just about having an HR department. It broadly involves the HR function, the line managers leading on the ground, and the actual structures and processes of your business. Let's look at what actually glues all this together.
Moving to Section 2, Culture as Core Competence.
This brings us to a somewhat abstract but incredibly powerful concept, organizational culture. By definition, culture is basically the taken-for-granted ways of doing things that just accumulate over time. It operates unconsciously. It's the shared beliefs that define how a group responds to challenges. And because it is so deeply ingrained, there are specific strategies where an organization's current culture gives it a completely unique advantage over other organizations. Simply put, culture is a core competence.
If we break it down, culture actually operates in 4 distinct layers, which perfectly shows why rivals just can't copy it. At the surface, you have values, the stated norms. A bit deeper, we find beliefs about specific issues. Then we hit behaviors, which is the day-to-day way the organization actually runs. And right dead in the center is the paradigm, those taken-for-granted assumptions. Outsiders can't easily observe that core paradigm, making it nearly impossible for competitors to replicate.
Which brings us to Part 3, the reality of behavioral change.
So what happens when that culture needs to evolve to keep up with a fast-moving market? This is where a lot of organizations trip up. Leaders absolutely love relying on hard change tools like restructuring the org chart or buying shiny new IT systems. But these are incredibly distinct from the soft variables of actual human behavior. You can easily redraw a chart on the whiteboard, but actually getting the humans inside those boxes to change their habits, that is a whole different ballgame.
Think about your own workplace for a second. We have to be highly realistic about the sheer difficulty and the long timescales involved in actually achieving behavior changes. Culture change is a really long process. As the quote points out, the hard change tools, like structures and systems, if used alone, are unlikely to deliver. You can't just install new software and expect people's underlying values and paradigms to magically shift overnight.
Okay, Section 4, the 4 rules of HR.
Because behavioral change is so complex, we have to ask a pretty challenging question. Is a specialist HR function even needed at all? In highly devolved organizations, busy line managers often end up taking on strategic HR responsibilities. But that creates a major problem, right? Managers at lower levels are often unfamiliar with corporate-level strategies, they are extremely busy, and they might totally lack professional HR knowledge. So if an HR function is felt to be valuable, expectations have to be super clear across 4 broad roles.
First up is the service provider. This is the traditional stuff, like undertaking recruitment or arranging training for those line managers who are carrying the strategic responsibility for HR issues. Second, we have the regulator. This role is all about setting the rules within which line managers operate. We're talking about establishing the boundaries for things like pay and promotions to ensure fairness across the board.
Third, HR acts as an advisor. They advise line managers on HR strategy issues, ensuring that policies and practices are actually in line with industry best practice.
And fourth, and this is huge for culture, they act as a change agent, physically moving the organization forward. Now here's the catch. It can prove really difficult for the exact same HR specialists to operate in all of these roles simultaneously. Think about it. They might feel a massive conflict trying to be a strict regulator setting rules while simultaneously trying to advise or act as a change agent pushing boundaries for a group of people. It requires an incredible balancing act. Finally, Section 5, Managers and Team Dynamics.
At the end of the day, all these grand strategies rely on the teams executing them on the ground. So a manager's relationship and leadership skills with both internal and external stakeholders are absolutely vital to nurturing high-performance work teams. It takes a lot to foster shared goals, collaboration, and accountability.
And as we map this out, notice something really important. A manager's ability to build and maintain teams of different personality types is just as important as the mix of actual competences in those teams. You could literally have all the specialized technical skills in the world, but if the personalities totally clash or no one communicates openly, the team is going to fail. You need that mix of collaborative mindsets to unlock the technical expertise.
And because business circumstances vary so wildly, managers must be able to vary their style of managing change depending on the situation. Teams and organizations must actually be capable of operating different styles simultaneously. A manager might need to be highly directive during a crisis, but totally participative during a brainstorming session. That kind of dynamic flexibility is key.
So as we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with this provocative thought about your own workplace. Are you relying way too much on hard change tools, just hoping a new system will fix your culture? And are your managers building teams based only on technical skills, completely ignoring the mix of personality types? Remember, people are your ultimate competitive advantage. Treat them and organize them with the strategic focus they actually deserve.